Hello and welcome to The Stack. For this week's show, we speak with the founder of a magazine celebrating all things Italy, plus a cool new title about basketball culture. And we have some Paris content too, with the editor of Emile Magazine du Monde, and we speak with the CEO of the Olympic Broadcasting Services. Enjoy the show. From Midori House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Italy Segreta was first launched in 2020 as an Instagram page, satiating our cravings for blue waters and pasta through stunning visuals, allowing us to virtually travel during a time of lockdown. It has since grown into a monthly digital publication, reaching Italy lovers globally and teaching us that there's a lot more to it than the stereotypes and representations we're used to seeing. Here, its creative director and co-founder, Marina Cacciapuoti, tell us about their second print issue, Estate Italiana, and about finding the right approach to sharing the places you love, giving voices to those who are too often forgotten, and the benefits of tourism. Monocle's Gabriele Grangier spoke with Marina.
So Italy Segreta started completely as a passion project. I used to live and work in New York, and I used to work in media. And also I was always like the only Italian person on the team. So obviously everything Italy related was very much directed to me, or just, like, can I please have a list of places you love and so on. But I also, a bit because I wanted to share everything that I loved about my country, but it also was born out of kind of seeing the same narrative repeated over and over abroad of our country. And I was always like feeling very frustrated, being like, there's so much more, we're so much more than just the Amalfi Coast, which we love, but there's more to it. We're more than just Florence and Rome and Venice. And also create something that wasn't only travel, but was about culture. Because I think what people really love about Italy is not just that it's physically beautiful, but it is our culture. And so it was kind of like started very small, and I created a website and started sharing it with a few people. And it was a bit about also talk to a bunch of friends that were writers, and started like in a very small passion project way. And then I partnered with my twin brother, who's the co-founder of Italy Segreta. We saw that there was so much potential, and we really wanted to create something that had an impact and that could kind of change and improve the narrative of Italy abroad, but also create something that Italians themselves were proud of. Like, they felt properly represented, and it allowed them to appreciate their country. Because it took me to leave, like, I always loved Italy. Always loved my home, but it took me being away from home for many years to appreciate it even more. And I think Italy Segreta is doing that for a lot of Italians, being like, hey, you don't have to go that far. Like, you really have everything everyone wants. You just kind of have to appreciate it and open your eyes to it. And we fully actually founded it as a company in the summer of 2020. And it was like, right after COVID, and I was on a dinghy in the middle of Costiera Amalfitana and it was that summer when nobody was traveling there. It was still, everything was still blocked, and there were only Italians. And we launched the actual website, the website you see today, obviously a 1.0 version, maybe a 0.1 version. And we launched the magazine, which is now a 12 issues a year, digital, and one printed issue. I think that for us it's super important to have everyone see that we're a platform that wants to celebrate, preserve, support, and share of Italian territory and culture, and not just be a platform that just kind of utilizes Italy in a way like it's beauty. But our goal is to allow people to go deeper. So, we're also very known on social media, and a lot of people still sometimes know us just like our Instagram. But what we try to do is to use our Instagram to allow people to go deeper and get onto our website and go learn a little bit more. And slowly we're doing that, and that's, the biggest satisfaction.
Yeah, and I was wondering then, how do you balance that? Because the name literally indicates Italy Segreta, revealing Italy's best kept secrets. How do you do that and share what you love and don't gatekeep, but still manage to preserve it and cherish what you share?
So that's a very good question, because I think it's something it's generally a very important topic where, some people think or can ask like, but what if then everybody's going to go to Marche and it's going to be filled with tourists? But the reality is that that's globalization. People are traveling way more. Social media is doing that in many ways. People will get everywhere eventually. I mean, you can see it as, again, the narrative before was just Costiera Amalfitana, Florence, Venice, Rome. Then it became Puglia. Then White Lotus came out, the show, and it became Sicily. So the truth is that globalization is happening and it will make people travel all over. But then as a platform that wants to preserve Italy, we want to present the Italy that we want to support and that we believe is truly, representing us. So we way rather give a lot of attention to those places and those people that deserve it, rather than the ones that are kind of like utilizing this influx of tourism and selling you an idea of Italy, but it's places that the Italians themselves would never eat at or go at. So this problem is not only something people always blame tourists, but it's not only a tourist problem. It's very much of how we Italians manage what we have, where sometimes we see it more as like a quick making money situation where like we can sell them this Italian dream and make money fast. And there's a lot of places instead that are very authentic. I don't like that word anymore because it's so abused, but are truly, are the way they are, and they've always been like this. So I way rather them keep living and expanding. And in terms of places, it's way better, even for cities right now that are getting overflowing with tourists, like a Florence, a Venice, instead allowing those tourists to also go to places like Friuli, Venezia Giulia, a region like Friuli, Venezia Giulia that needs a lot of tourism and would benefit from tourism and would allow that kind of tourism to expand from, Venezia to other parts of Veneto into Friuli, Venezia Giulia, like Marche too. There's so Basilicata. All these places actually need tourism.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. But I also think like it's reflected through your contributors how globalization can be beneficial because they're not all necessarily Italian. But yeah, I was wondering like, why do you also seek out foreign contributors? What do they bring to the table?
For us, it's so important to have a mix between Italian writers. So because obviously everybody is going to have a different perspective. Like Italians that were born and raised here will have an experience of the country and their life growing up here that somebody that even if they've lived here for 20 years, they just won't have the same kind of experience. But having international writers that live in Italy and know about Italy is also fantastic. And sometimes they actually are the ones that go find a place that nobody knows about, because they come here with the eyes of, let's say, a child, meaning that everything is new and they have no prejudice. For example, we as Italians, we're very abitudinari. We like habits. We like to go to our bar where we go from ever. We like to go do aperitivo in the same place, same hour instead. And, we're also very much, we are from this neighborhood. Oh, we don't go to that neighborhood because that's for this kind of Roman or for that kind of Florentine. While I feel like international people that come to Italy are a bit more curious. They come to Italy with the eyes that sometimes we Italians have lost due to all the negativity that there is in Italy in terms of bureaucracy and politics, and Italians being a bit tired about how things don't work, while international people come here and really want to discover it and venture and find things and see things with new eyes. So I think having that balance is great. It really gives, a good vision of Italy for even sometimes, we have readers that read articles written by born and raised Italians, and they're like, wow, I didn't know about this. And it's right like behind my house. But because probably they just never had, it's like, oh, it's there. I'm not going to go, I'm going to go eventually. So I think having that mix is super important.
Yeah, and you had a recent article I read about mixed Italians and their perspectives. And that was just a whole nother thing about why they are 100% Italian, but why like bringing all these voices is important, because then the amount of points of views you can get on a country is endless, and that showed it so much.
Thank you. And that piece is so important because, again, aside from like, having journalists that like are from other places that decide to live here for a few years or move here, there are a lot of people that are actually, they're Italians, they're mixed ethnicity, but they're fully Italian. But again, we as a smaller country that sometimes maybe we're a little bit behind on certain things, have maybe a bit of prejudice sometimes and don't realize that like diversity is great. And we, as a country, I mean, we have a lot of immigrants and we should accept them, and they are Italian and they should be seen that as Italians, because again, you talk to people that sometimes come from little towns and they are very much a little bit provincial in the way of thinking. And they're like, no, they're not Italians. They come from somewhere else. And the reality is they're probably more Italian than the people that have lived there forever. It's just kind of, I think it's important to create conversation, educate, bring information without being too heavy, or we're not a news kind of media, but to give cultural information. I think it's good for both people from abroad and here.
Yeah, I mean, I may be wrong, but it feels very much like there's a anthropological angle to a lot of what you put out.
Absolutely there is. And and we try to do it in a very, again, we notice that what people, and that's something we do also on our social media. We realize that what people first want, their first impact, is that, glittering sea. It is the narrative of the grandmas, which are absolutely part of our reality, but are not our only reality. That's why we then also come out with like the list of 35 under 35 presenting young Italians. So it's kind of figuring out a way to give people a bit what they want in terms of with their idea of Italy, and then with that try to give them something else that they might not know about, but then they figure out that it's interesting, or they just discover and they're like, oh, Italy is this too. So it's kind of finding that balance between giving content that is a more known idea of Italy with a less known of Italy that is as good, it's just not known.
No, it's so good because you always get surprised. I remember there was a piece about Italo Disco, which the whole world is a fan of, knows, loves, and then it like delves into how it came in a specific like political climate and like the role it played in that. And it was so interesting, and I would have never guessed. I don't think most foreigners would know, or even some Italians. And it was so good to have that like bit of insight.
Exactly. And this is exactly like, we hope all our readers are like you, that like, it's something maybe in Italo Disco is something known all over the world, but then most people don't know anything about it. And that giving that bit of extra info without making it too heavy, we hope slowly in the long run will really change the immaginario of Italy abroad and also within Italy.
Well, speaking of imagery, I wanted to talk about the artistic direction of Italy Segreta, because I think it's incredible and it translates so perfectly from the Instagram page to the newsletter to the actual print magazine. And I was wondering, where did you get your inspiration from? How did you pick this aesthetic? Because it's very specific, I think.
So to be honest, I come from schooling-wise, I come from a photography and fine art background. And I think also living in New York for quite a while, it kind of showed me that, Americans do one thing really well, which is branding. And, they make something not that beautiful look beautiful, or they sell you something that practically is terrible or doesn't exist, but they make it look amazing. And I'm like, well, we have something that is full of substance and is amazing. Why can't we also make it look, and not only visually and photography wise, like photo and video, but also in terms of design on our website and newsletter look like that? Because there's a lot of outlets. We're definitely not the first one to talk about Italy and focus on Italy. The problem was that the ones in Italy are very archaic in terms of design, and the ones abroad then in terms of content are a little bit stereotypical. So it was like, but let's combine the two things where it's like great content and information and knowledge, and at the same time, great design, and also got really lucky. I mean, the video side, I mean, it's something that I've been doing all my life and I enjoy. And I was also always like, why are people moving their cameras constantly? Why can't we just sit and watch a moment? And that moment is enough, and it's so beautiful. We don't need this constant like moving. But I also have a fantastic team. I have an amazing graphic designer, Steph, who works on the website, and an amazing other graphic designer that works on the newsletter. And even when we hire people, we go very much gut, like it's kind of a feeling. And because I think everything can be taught, but there's a certain kind of sensibility that you have it or not in a way of seeing things and doing things. And I mean, I have a fantastic team in general. So, I mean, they understood my vision and made it even better. So it's really, everything in Italy Segreta is really a teamwork.
That's why it all blends perfectly. And you just published your latest issue, Estate l'Italiana. I was wondering if you could tell us more about it.
Yes, yeah. So this is our baby. This is our second
baby.
Exactly, a second baby. Absolutely. Let's not neglect the first child. But I mean, I come from print. I used to work in print, and I really believe in print. It's just, I knew from the beginning that I wanted to get to the point to print a magazine, but I also knew that that wasn't the right way to start because we had no one who would buy it or read it. So I knew it had to start from digital, and also budget-wise. I mean, printing today, we also print everything in Italy, and everything we make or do in terms of merch is made in Italy. And I knew it had a cost. And so we had to figure out a way for people to first be interested in what we had to say and then create the print that this summer. So every year, for now it's yearly. Hopefully, eventually we can make it few more editions, but it's a large format. Last year was dedicated to quotidianità, which is, daily life. And it's kind of an ode to, and the idea also, the size at that time came from the newspaper, Italian newspaper, so that when it's folded, it's the same size of a printed mag. And then we loved it, and so we kept it even for this issue. Well, this one is dedicated to Estate Italiana. And this kind of brings you back to what I was saying before, where we decided this theme that obviously attracts and everybody loves Italy in summer. But it's also, once you open and read it, you'll see that there's much more than just the most obvious things about Estate Italiana. And we talk also about off-season. But again, it's kind of the allure and then giving you something a little bit more. And I mean, again, it's our baby. We have 2 covers. We just launched it, and it's doing really well, and we're very excited.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle and Marina. And the new issue of Italy Segreta is out now. For more information, go to italysegreta.com. And now we welcome someone that was a guest on the Stack a few times. And this time she speaks with us from a series of special shows we've recorded in Paris during the Olympic Games. It is, of course, Marie-Pierre Lannelongue from Le Magazine du Monde, a title that comes together every weekend with your copy of French daily Le Monde. Marie spoke with Monocle's Emma Nelson.
We are Le Magazine du Monde, so we come just like a little brother of this very classical and very popular and excellent daily Le Monde. It's a big brand.
And a handsome little brother.
Yeah. And we decided in January that we wanted to do a contre-programmation that I can translate. That is to say, no Olympics in M, because we were supposed, and that's the truth, that we were about to give so many contents on the Olympics in the daily, on the app, on the website. So we were supposed that we could find some readers who didn't want to hear about the Olympics. And that's it. So we decided to a long read on Le Baron, which was a nightclub in Paris in like 10 years ago, a very trendy one. And it was like a myth, a legend of the night, of Parisian night. And now this week we are going to have a big story on une résidence d'écrivains in Tuscany, where this very chic Italian baroness meets the biggest writers, Emmanuel Carrère and Zadie Smith, who she considers as her daughter. So as you see, it's long read, very interesting, but it's like a bubble of reading in this big bubble of Olympics.
I know. I'm very much looking forward to hearing about the Readers' Retreat in Tuscany.
The Readers' Retreat, sorry.
You'd mentioned the long read. Is that still considered to be a necessary part of people's digestion of news here in France? Or are we feeling slightly as if our mental capacity for being patient with words is diminishing?
All the long reads, and we propose probably 20 long reads every week in the week, in the daily, like everywhere. They perform very, very, very well. I think we need that. And also, all our readers, they pay to be informed. They pay for the news. So they have to have value for what they pay. And a very interesting long read. We have very good journalists with very high level of writing, and they know how to raconter une histoire, to tell a story and a long story. And do you that's what they pay for. All the readers of Le Monde, they pay for this amount of quality, and also even if the subject is hard, if it's a very good story, you spend a good time.
And in your role as sort of directing this magazine, this supplement, do you sometimes feel under pressure to shorten deadlines, to push through, or is there still that sense that if a journalist needs extra time, that time is not a luxury, time is essential?
Yes, time is essential, and I consider print press, even if we are a very powerful site and app, print press is a luxury item today, and a very high quality, very long story, beautiful picture, beautiful layout. That's luxury for me. And
tell us a little bit more about the print situation in France at the moment. For so long, people have looked and still look at France, Germany, certain areas of the United States, like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, as being a place where you can enjoy print. And your kiosks are famous around the world for, walking past a kiosk and you have these walls and walls and walls of beautiful, colourful, enticing publications, which in so many other parts of the world are disappearing. And I was walking yesterday up to the metro station, and there was a gentleman who had laid out all the I think it was on Sunday morning, laid out all the papers. And I said, this doesn't exist here in many countries. And he said, yeah, but screens have no charm. Mm. Is that world still holding strong, that world of print and that world of that thing that is this France is just so, and Paris in particular, is so famous for?
The kiosks, they close since the COVID, and in 2020 they close in different parts of Paris. You can't hardly find a kiosk. You have to go to the station to have a newsstand. So France is no exception. That's exactly the same situation. But I think it's all about brands, and Le Monde is a big traditional brand. We're going to be 80 years old in December. So we can develop our digital offer, which perform very, very well, which allow us to have still a magazine every Friday, even if we perform very well on Instagram and on different digital proposition.
And how do you prepare as such a sort of having been in the French print world for so long? This is your sort of your absolute it's stitched into your soul. How do you prepare the long-term strategy to retain long reads, quality, all the things that we have talked about?
We invest in journalists. We have a lot of journalists in different fields. We have this offer, which is quite not expensive, but it's not it's not free. So if it's not free, you have to offer, once again, a high quality to your readers. So long reads, either on the Olympics or on Ukraine, on different subjects, that's something we work on.
Thank you very much, Marie. And grab a copy of M. Le Magazine du Monde if you're in Paris this weekend. I am, so I cannot wait to read the new issue. We head to Montreal now to discuss Basket, a magazine about basketball culture. They just published their 4th issue. Fun interviews that range from NBA stars to people involved in grassroots basketball. The title is a must for the sport lovers. The small format magazine is also full of cool illustrations. I had the pleasure to speak with the magazine founder, Alain Michel Habib.
The godfather of basketball magazines for me would be Slam, which is an American-based basketball magazine that started, I think they celebrated their 30 years. But, there are a few titles here and there. I think in the new generation, there was a magazine called Franchise. I think they were out of California. They were doing something really amazing, but then they branched out to a few other things, and they became more of a clothing brand and an art gallery. So the magazine, you have to focus, and we're 100% focused on what we do. There are a lot of magazines in the newsstand that look at statistics and have a lot of photos maybe, but what we're doing, we're more story driven and illustration driven, and we're small. So it's I didn't realize this at the beginning when I started the magazine, but that the size was going to place us in front of other magazines. So we ended up having placement, people seeing us more because we were much smaller than all the other magazines. So I didn't even think about that at the beginning. I just said, I just want something portable in terms of size, technical aspect. Just want it portable. And some people have really big back pockets because they tell me they put in their back pocket. I have to check my back pocket, but I've never tried putting it in my back pocket. But yeah, for some, they carry it around. It's really interesting.
And it's also, from my understanding, reading the latest issue that I have in front of me, it's also a look at perhaps a little bit of grassroots basketball as well. It's not necessarily just, the latest NBA team that is winning all the matches, but so it looks at the culture around the sport itself as well, right?
Absolutely. For a lot of people, basketball equals NBA. But for me and a lot of other people, basketball is basketball. It's everything. It's different leagues. It's different. It's art. It's all sorts of stuff. It's just really vast. But because at the beginning, when I said I was going to start a basketball magazine, every single person was saying, okay, so it's like an NBA magazine. And I was like, no, it's not NBA. It's just basketball. So that's why, if you look at the earlier issues, there's a Japanese artist who creates players out of Legos, and there's different things. And there's a commissioner from a Canadian basketball league. It's just very varied, a lot of artists.
Are you a player yourself? I know sometimes people love the sport, but they don't necessarily practice.
I played it a lot. I still play a little bit, not as much. I need to get back into it for sure. I love it. I watch a lot of it. It brought me a lot of joy, when I was young, and it continues to bring me a lot of joy and happiness. That's why I wanted to devote all my time to this.
And Alan, I'm not necessarily asking your height, but only if you want to tell, but do you need to be tall to play basketball? I always have this very basic question.
Absolutely not. To make that point, we had the smallest basketball player to ever play in the NBA in our first issue, Muggsy Bogues. I don't know how we got him. I don't know why he said yeah. We had nothing. He's just he's a real one, as they say, and he just accepted to be interviewed. And when we got that interview, and it's in the first issue, which is really hard to get now because I didn't make too many copies and they basically sold out. I felt like this was going to go somewhere when we got Muggsy. It was just a very special moment, and there were other people in the first issue too. But people, especially basketball fans, were like, "You got Muggsy? How'd you get Muggsy?" And it was just because it's a small size. magazine, and we got the smallest player. And I was a huge fan of his. But to answer your question, you do not need to be, 6 feet and up and over to play basketball. Absolutely not. And there are different types of play. Like you can play by yourself. You can play 1-on-1, 2-on. You can play 3-on-3. There's so many different types. No, you don't need to be super tall. You just have to love it, and that's it. You have fun.
I would love to try it out. You have to teach me some moves because, you know what, I practice a bit in school, but I think it's a very fun sport, even to watch it. I am enjoying. Are you enjoying the Olympics, by the way, the basketball there?
Yes, the latest issue came out, so I've been shipping out copies out. So yeah, I've been able to catch a number of games. There is a big game that's happening today at noon here. But yeah, I've been able to catch a few. Every time I turn on TV, I do see a lot of swimming, but I think the swimming competitions are over. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
And I was going to ask you, you mentioned before about the illustration. There are a lot of wonderful illustration in the magazine. I think such an important part of what basket is, even the covers. So tell us a bit more. Do you work with a few illustrators for the magazine? I think it really kind of gives a proper identity for the magazine.
If you want to know, I'll give you a little bit inside scoop. When we first released the first issue, it was green cover, but everything, it was just text. And one of the early people that put me on a different path, Jeremy from Mag Culture, I sent him a copy, and he said we exchanged some emails, and he says we need visuals, and I was like, can you stock it? And he's like, you got some work to do. And then, I took his feedback, and I was like, okay, let's create more visuals and stuff. So we have a lot of artists that believe in what we're doing, and they're amazing. And it has become part of Basket's DNA. I didn't know that the covers were going to be the way they were. It just happened. And now when I think about it, it's kind of like the Simpsons intro that always has a twist. So our covers is kind of like the Simpsons intro. It's just science seems similar, but there's a twist. Simpsons, with the couch. So it's always something different. So I feel like the Simpsons intro subconsciously influenced me because it just looks finally it looks good. All these different covers and little twists and things, and there are reasons why these covers exist, and there's the themes, and there's a lot of backstory to it. And inside the magazine, because you're talking about the illustrations, we've developed a storybook vibe. If we take the most recent issue, Tyrell Winston, who's an international artist, he's been interviewed many times. And so when we interviewed him, I wanted to make him enter the basket world. So there are a lot of questions that are asked, and there are certain things he mentions, and they basically his words, are turned into illustrations. A bit I'm going to talk a lot about different movies and different things because there are a lot of influences. I don't know if you remember this film. I don't know when it came out. Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Oh yeah, I love it.
So if you think of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it's real with animation. So it's a bit Basket has its roots in different things. And Who Framed Roger Rabbit is definitely an influence of having words, but then having these wild cartoon or just illustrations. So it's coexisting. This is a really funny story from the blue cover, the issue 3 blue cover. We had a small piece on a mascot, the Coyote mascot from the San Antonio Spurs. And I don't know what happened and how, I sent a copy to someone, but not to the mascot. The mascot ends up having a copy and ends up putting it on Instagram. And I end up talking with the mascot in DMs. And I'm like, what is happening here? It's next level of I'm talking to a mascot on Instagram. And it's just the world the project's a dream. Things keep happening, and it puts a smile on people's faces. And there are a lot of interesting stories that are happening.
And I guess there's growth as well, right, Alain? Because I can see, even some of the magazine shops I follow, from Le Kiosque de Paris to Casa Magazines, they are selling Basket as well. So it's also becoming quite international, right? Because you're based there in Canada, but clearly you have an international audience for Basket.
Absolutely. And another little story is when we started, tried to get stocked in my hometown of Montreal. If you know anything about Montreal, Montreal is hockey culture. And no one wanted to stock it. And I was like, all right. And then I tried Toronto. It was the same thing because it was new and whatever. So I have a friend luckily, I have a friend who was the periodicals manager at McNally Jackson. But that's not the person you want to send your first issue to, because he's seen everything and he has high standards and he's got, a specific taste. And I was like scared to send him the copy because, it kind of make or break the project. But I was like, okay, I have nothing to lose. So I sent a copy to him. And a week later, I was a bit nervous. And I said, well, how do you like it? And he answered me and he says, I love it. It's become my go-to read for my commute to work. I need to stock this. So without him, without New York, the project would not be where it is today. So what happened was, if you look at the Instagram bio, if you see the cities, those are the cities of how we got. So we started in New York, and the second city was Paris, and I believe the third one is Portland. So if you look at the bio, then it's not alphabetical order. It's the order of where we got stocked. And very fast, because basketball is loved by a lot of people, but we're also because we're doing something special, it's grown really, really fast and very international. Eventually, Montreal started stocking the magazine, and sometimes you have to be patient. We're stocked in the best store in Montreal. If you're ever in Montreal, it's a concept shop near the Notre Dame Basilica called Marché Saint-Laurent. It's unbelievable. It celebrates everything Montreal, has a strong eye for design. So, sometimes you have to be patient, and it's the best store in Montreal right now. So sometimes things take time. As you said, Kiosque de Paris, they're huge fans of what we're doing. Casa, Iconic, McNally Jackson, and everywhere it sells out. I don't have they're there, they sell out. So it's just it's growing. So it's not easy, but we make something fun. I guess people, want more of it, and it's not easy. We're trying to be super creative every single time. The flow of the pages is it's also our trademark, the way that the content flows. I take a lot of pride in the way it flows. We just want to keep growing, and there are a lot of exciting things that should happen in the next few weeks. So we'll definitely keep you posted.
Thank you very much, Alain, and next time we'll play basketball together. For more information, go to their Instagram page, BSKT Mag. And finally on the show, back to the Olympics. Another highlight from our live shows from Paris this week. 11,000 hours of content is the equivalent of a year's worth of broadcasting. Close to 1,200 cameras, 8,300 people coming from 110 countries. If you've watched even a split second of footage from this year's games, then it will have been filmed and syndicated by the Olympic Broadcasting Service. The OBS has taken over a huge site at Le Bourget on the outskirts of the capital. The exhibition center is now filled with thousands of screens, satellite dishes, and hundreds of staff. Monocle's Emma Nelson went up to the site to meet the man in charge of it all, Yiannis Exarchos, the CEO of Olympic Broadcasting Services. She began by asking him how much of filming is done by his team and how much is carried out by individual broadcasters.
We are responsible for providing a very high quality coverage and a very unbiased and independent coverage of all the sporting event and the ceremonies to all our broadcasters. This is one part of our job. The second is precisely to help them to do additional filming, to customize, to tailor-made what they do for their own audience, to accommodate their own commentators, to help them do their own interviews in the mixed zones, to add additional cameras if they want to do their own stories.
What does each country want? Give me a couple of examples of one country wanting one thing and another country wanting something completely different. And then how you actually make this work.
Actually, it's an interesting subject because this has changed through the years. In traditional television, what each country wanted, I would say, were the major sports, and usually the three major sports like athletics, gymnastics, and swimming. And then they wanted to focus on the sports which are either very popular in their own country or the sports where they have a possibility of a medal. That practically meant for us the same thing, that we had to produce everything perfectly well. But with the emergence of digital, of streaming platforms where broadcasters have the capacity to actually put on the air and broadcast in their own countries more and more of the broadcasters are trying to broadcast almost everything that we produce. And let me give you an example. Back in 1996 in the Atlanta Games, there were games in the United States. I think the domestic broadcaster at the time, NBC, I believe they broadcasted around 120, 130 hours. In the Games of Paris, which don't even take place in the United States, NBC will broadcast close to 8,000 hours. So that gives you a sense of what has happened through the digital revolution and why we have also ourselves transitioned what we do into producing more content, more diverse content in order to meet all this insatiable desire.
Insatiable is the right word, isn't it? People just want more and more and more. So when you get up in the morning, what are your thoughts? It's like, how do we make this bigger? How do we make this easier? But also, you have to be even more nimble than ever, don't you? Despite the size, you have to be more flexible.
Assuming you have slept at night, you wake up in the morning thinking, how can you, on one hand, address all these needs for different content, for different audiences and for different circumstances, but doing that in more efficient ways. And let me tell you something. Here we produce 15% more than we produced in Tokyo. We produce almost 30% more than what we produced back in Rio in 2016. However, the size of the broadcast center is significantly smaller. The size of our footprints in the venues is smaller. The power that we consume is 50% less than what it was in Rio. This is a permanent objective that we have, to leverage technology and opportunities that technology provides us in order to produce more in a smarter way. So not to depend on traditional broadcast technologies, but to extend on the edge of technology as it happens today has allowed us to be so much more flexible.
So what kind of new equipment have you got when it comes to broadcasting and also capturing what's going on that you didn't have in Tokyo? What's the bit that you're most excited about when you unwrap the box and you're like, oh, we've got this is great?
Some of the things are further developments of things that we started in Tokyo or even earlier. But I would say that if there is a major factor that has affected and enhanced a little bit our coverage is the developments in AI. Artificial intelligence, something that we have been experimenting with for a number of years. Artificial intelligence, unlike what many people believe, did not arrive last year. It's been around for 70 years. But the developments during the last years have allowed us to do some things that were difficult in the past. So there are things that are directly visible from the audience. Like you will see in our coverage, we use a lot of replays, which are 360 degrees, where we go around, where we freeze a moment and we go around the athletes, and that helps us show better what is exactly happening. For some sports, this is very revealing for people to understand how difficult is what the athletes are doing. We use stroboscopic applications where, again, we freeze moments in some sports where the movements of the athletes are very, very fast, like diving, gymnastics, athletics, where athletes are doing incredible things, but they happen so fast that you can hardly actually capture what their bodies are doing. So now, by freezing different moments in their effort and reproducing that as a very fast replay, allows people to really understand what it takes to do a dive from 10 meters and not have any splash in the water, or do a very complex movement in artistic gymnastics.
Tell me a little bit more about the principles behind the broadcasting here. The reason why I ask that is that we have seen in live broadcasting, especially in live coverage of news, for example, in the last 10, even 5 years, people broadcast on their phones, people broadcast off the Wi-Fi. There is perhaps not that sense of formality, of occasion, professionalism, ambition, budget, you name it. What's it like to be at the helm of something which is still done properly?
Let me try to answer in a different way. You describe ways of capturing images and telling stories. it is important to understand that also for what we do, storytelling is at the heart. Storytelling is the objective. Now, the way the content is consumed today, it's been done across different platforms in different times of the days, in different setups. People still watch in a laid-back position on big screens, but they watch also when they get on the train to go to their work. They're side watching when they're at work, every moment of the day. So the content that you produce needs to be made in a way that's convenient for this media. I think that one interesting thing that people probably can notice in our coverage here is that we are moving a little bit away from the traditional formality of the coverage of the games. Of course, everything that happens during the competition on the field of play is covered in the best possible way, under the best possible light. But you will see a lot of content being done behind the scenes when athletes relax, on where they prepare, or when they are nervous, or when they are trying to concentrate. So access and getting closer to the athletes in more informal ways is clearly something that we do here, because we believe that it enhances the storytelling. It helps people identify more with these superheroes that are the athletes and understand better what it takes to do it. So all these development of more casual storytelling that comes from the daily use of mobile phones, for me, is also a rich source to tap on. In what we do, we have to do everything. It's not about choosing that we will do a coverage like that, or that we will do a super sophisticated coverage with 100 professional cameras. We have to do both, because the Olympics is one of the last big aggregators of audiences. It's not bringing together just the core sports fans. It will bring together more than half the Earth's population. And this happens for reasons which are beyond sport. People want to connect. I think we all feel, especially in today's world where, again, we are faced with conflicts, with divisions, that I believe the fact that we can bring together 206 nations, you can have in the Olympic Village all athletes together at a time when in the world there are 70 ongoing military conflicts. I think it's an achievement, and it inspires somehow people to want to celebrate a world like that. And to do that, you have to talk to all these different audiences in a way that they understand and in a way that moves them.
Thank you very much, Yiannis Exarchos. I love to know more about the behind the scenes of all the Olympic broadcasting. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks as ever to our editor, Jack Jewers. Any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fp@monocle.com. Maybe you have a suggestion of a magazine that you'd love to see here on The Stack. You've been listening to The Stack, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.